Nigeria, we've had different different acts of this formal education system. The indirect system had made use of some traditional rulers. Some gotten integrated was known as formal education. So what I've just done in that couple of minutes away was for us to have the background to the formal education or Western education system in Africa. However, the fact that the curriculum and system conundrum in African education mentally foundational. The introduction of Western education in Africa was structured essentially with imperial connotations. If there had been a more flexible integration of African states into such an educational system, which would, of course, would have made it easier to bridge the gaps. You are going to come into a particular setting to integrate your system or your way of life. The first thing you're going to do is to ensure that you succeed by making them have the deep knowledge, deep understanding, deep reasons, cardinal factors of why you want to integrate. This was the case of the imperialists when they invaded Africa. What, as a matter of fact, when at the time they were going to leave, for instance, we talk of some British colonies like Nigeria, like Gambia, like Ghana, while their colonialists were going to depart for their respective countries. The system of education left behind, led to system of education, the economic system, the social cultural system were shattered. In other words, African society did not have the proper understanding of the system they've introduced to them. Well, some scholars have argued that this could be deliberate on the part of the imperialists. Take, for instance, A.G. Frank 2008 argues that third world and African nations, particularly those in Africa, are underdeveloped today, not because of the incorporation of their system into the global system, but because of how their social economic system were incorporated. In other words, what A.G. Frank was saying there was that there wasn't any problem by integrating Africans, by integrating the blacks in the Western education system in the Western world. But the way and manners, the process through which this was carried out was quite very faulty and challenging. And that is why, if you must talk of bridging any gap between African continent and the West in terms of educational system, some fundamental things must be addressed. And that has to come from the foundational section of how the Africans were brought or were integrated into the system. Leviticus 2001 says education is the purpose and the positive contributions of that person to the development of his environment. What that simply means is that you cannot have somebody called an educated fellow without any significant impact or clarity of what such person preaches about the knowledge that has been acquired. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognizes all human beings as freeborn and equal in dignity and rights. Over 2009, education right of the world citizen is also exemplified in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, captured by Ehazu 1998, and expanded that the declaration of this particular right has been adopted and domesticated in various governments of the world. Article 1 in subsection 1, 2, and 3 of that same very article, that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, says everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available. Subsection 2 says, education shall be directed to the full development of human personality and to the strengthening of respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote undertaking, tolerance, and friendship. Subsection 3, in addition to the globally declared human rights, several other international protocols, conventions, and charters have been specifically subscribed to or adopted nations to address and cater for Western education, particularly in African countries. So if all this, why the challenge? While the pitfalls? In other words, this is that the world, the West itself, was aware that there was a need to assist, to help, to integrate, to give Africans proper knowledge of formal education. But why the horizontal gaps? Why this disparity? Why would we still have Africans not properly integrated into the understanding of the Western education? So the bridge can only be closed, or we can only have Western education, we can only have the Western education being properly achieved in African continent when the two continents, especially the imperialists, will be honest with themselves in order to integrate Africans properly. African modern education system expanded shortly after the colonialists. The Shore of Africa. Garber 2006 submits that about 50% of the population was poor as of 1960. For instance, when Nigeria gained independence, the first 2 decades of the Nigerian independence, between the 60s and the 70s, witnessed modern education. It witnessed modern education. And the modern education then, witnessed modern education. And by 1980s, there was stagnation in African education due to the stagnation and drastic decrease in education financing. What happened? Why did education, formal education, thrive so much in the first 2 decades of African country? Like I'm citing Nigeria as an example now. It was simply of the fact that the classical Nigerian nationalists valued, appreciated African education and formal education. They believe knowledge is power. And there was a need for Nigeria and other African countries to stand independently and build African continents or African nation states without being necessarily dependent on the Western world. I'm talking of the likes of Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, the Leopold Senghor of Senegal, talk of the likes of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, the likes of Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, with the likes of Sekou Touré of Guinea, all of them like that. And we talk of Nigeria, we talk of Nnamdi Azikiwe, we talk of Abacha Akoli, and we talk of the likes of Obafemi Awolowo. They took it very seriously then. And that was why by 1980, as at the time of the Second Republic, Obafemi Awolowo ensured that education, free education system was part of his cardinal areas of how to build Africa. And you will agree with me that since those periods of the classical African scholars, what we have continually have in Africa today is just try and error when you talk about education or educational systems. And the conundrum, as it were, remain persistent because of some of these problems, as it were. Now,
yeah, please kindly
quickly, I identify. Okay. Let me just quickly talk about the causes of the conundrum in African education system. Quickly, we have the policy somersault. Yeah, we have social norms. We have poor leadership. Policy somersault. Most of the time, they just come on board. They give different policies, and when another government comes, what happens is to just push that off and replicate another system. That isn't good for any society or for any country to practice. So definitely some part of the north today, you see where some of them do not even want to see Western education, especially if you look at one of the reasons being given by the core northeasterners, which has led to these issues of the security attack, the terrorist group. They don't want formal education. And by ignorant perspective, you will still see them using modern technology to fight or to attack people. And formal education. It's quite unfortunate I don't have enough time. But then, the consequences of conundrum education in Africa has brought about graduates, it has brought functional illiterates, it has brought unemployment, mass poverty, underdevelopment, social violence, unrest, and it has also brought about societal burdens. And peculiarly, I must say this, has resulted to constant disruption of academic calendar. It has resulted to funding institutions, has brought about brain drain. Really, you go to any of the Western universities. If you go to your university today, you go to later, you are going to see one or two African professors lecturing there, contributing to the importance or contributing to the educational system of the countries. This is brain drain. Why not? Because back in their own continent, back in Africa, they were not being encouraged. I conclude by saying this. Episodic development of key sectors of education in Africa is as a result of the structural weakness of the continent in the face of the modern world. There is a cost search to the argument that globalizing the world with developing countries, especially Africa, has grossly embedded an horizontal gap among the nation states. The consequences of these interactions and impacts, however, have been credibly premised such dominant focus of imperialism on African states. They are examined to colonial legacies, which again control a state of international dependency, particularly in the cardinal sector of education. Imperialism and neocolonialism created as structurally fragile nations in Africa. No wonder one of the great Pan-African crusaders, Kwame Nkrumah, imperialism is the highest stage of neocolonialism, having incessantly exploited the rich gift of nature by purported imperialist globalization is a key recipe to sustain the world order. Unfortunately, what plays out between the North and the global South is globalization. As these are what we have in most of the African countries now is globalization and not globalization. Because if you talk of globalization, it's supposed to come with mutual interest. Finally, I just want to come up with these few recommendations that need to be taken out. African leaders need to take this to very critical cognizance. If we must bridge the gap between the West and African education, should advise more on the human development by providing employment opportunities. That is, it is not just about creating or looking for a way that people can just go to just any school, but you should also ensure that you prioritize, come up with strategies that can ensure human development, that can ensure capital infrastructure and resources in order to set a path with the Western education. Two, Nigerian states will employ integrative approach to participation. That's also very important. Otherwise, what we continue to have will just be an act of the state. Then number three, Nigeria should look into diversification in order to have that proper sense of how education can be, how education can be structured in Africa, so that you won't be talking about moving to the Western world and saying you must have a certain amount of money to be put in place before you can be. It has to be mutual. African students or Africans that want to come to the Western world should be given that sense of belonging. It should be mutual. You don't give conditions. You don't charge so exorbitantly. And even when they are contributing to the development, there should be some very special opportunities. That will be. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I just have to, well, due to the time factor, I appreciate every one of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Adekunle Alaye. Personally, I've been able to highlight one or two things, and I believe participants are also jotting down their questions. We'll take questions at the end of the section. The participant can also make use of the meeting chat channel to drop their questions, while we'll collate and do justice to all the questions. Without wasting much time, we'll invite our second speaker for today, Dr. Dr. Taiwo Onyoluwa. So, yeah, Dr. Taiwo, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, let's have your presentation, please.
All right. First, I'd like to thank everyone who is here today, and I'm grateful and opportune to be part of this initiative and part of this wonderful program. So, am I allowed to share my screen? I would just like to share my talking points.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. I believe I'm sharing my screen now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Dr. Alaye. He did a wonderful job introducing the African education, where we are coming from. And it's actually important to know where we are coming from, to be able to understand the challenges we have and where we can potentially go. So before I start, I would just like to introduce myself briefly. I have a Bachelor of Pharmacy from University of Ibadan. From there, I moved to the UK to do a master's in pharmacology, and I have my PhD in molecular medicine from the University of Cologne in Germany. Currently, I'm into life science research, where I basically study liver disease research. So on that note, I'll just move on to the topic for the day, which is curriculum and system conundrum in African education, bridging the gap with the Western educational system. So basically, my talking points for today would be my experiences and my perspectives in the last 20 years. Yeah, so talking about the current state of our educational system, it's important to be able to understand the key characteristics of the current state. And as Dr. Alaye has mentioned while he was presenting, our educational system is heavily influenced, even though we had the parts pre-colonial eras, but you will still find out that our educational system is heavily influenced by the colonial era educational models. And currently, like I said, I'll be talking from my experience and my perspective. I see that our university system at the moment is currently encourages rote memorization-based teaching models, meaning that students are not encouraged to think critically, to analyze, and based on that, aside that, we still have limited access to quality education in rural areas, particularly when you talk about places in the north where level of illiteracy and level of education is still quite low compared to other parts of Nigeria. And also, you also have variability in the different educational system, either across countries, across the different African countries, or across regions in Nigeria. And so looking at some of the challenges we face in our educational system, you would realize that having passed through, I'm sure most of us passed through undergraduate education in Nigeria. And we can easily attest to the fact that most of our classrooms are overcrowded. Based on the fact that a classroom that has been built for maybe 30 students is overcrowded, and you have student-to-teacher ratio exceeding 40:1. And this does not encourage personalized training. It reduces personalized attention to students. I remember during my master's program, we were under 15, and we had a curriculum whereby we had a course that was called professional development. And what that does is it pairs 2 or 3 students to a teacher. So basically, we don't do anything. We don't do any teaching, nothing. But what it does is that it brings you closer to your tutor. Your tutor is able to understand your needs, and you're also able to understand what the tutor is expecting from you as students. Aside the overcrowded classrooms, student-to-teacher ratio being high in Nigeria, you also have inadequate resources, shortage of classrooms, limited access to technology. I remember my 100-level Faculty of Science, University of Ibadan. It was such a crowded, classroom. Sometimes you're not even encouraged to go to class, because when you go to class, you don't get to, take anything out. And one of the other challenges we face is outdated curricula. We can well attest to the fact that some of our curriculums are outdated, and these are not always being updated or reviewed. Now, talking about the educational system, I've been privileged to study in the UK. I've been privileged to study in Germany, and currently I'm in the United States. So I've traveled far and wide. I've seen it all. Some of the core elements of the Western educational system I will be talking about is 1, emphasis on critical thinking. So the system actually encourages students to ask questions, be able to analyze and think independently. And one of the things I realized when I was moving was the fact that, when you're in a gathering of other students, from different parts of the world. You realize that for me personally, I had the challenge of really, when I started out, I had the challenge of really engaging because of the fact that we're not being taught about that aspect of learning back at home. Over here again, you realize that your curriculum is very broad. You have a wide range of courses, interdisciplinary learning. You have access to information, equipped libraries. Even if you're someone who is not used to visiting libraries, you have access to online libraries, digital resources, research facilities, where you can easily where you can use and be able to grow your learning abilities. So some of the strengths of the Western education, again, I will talk about is you have advanced technology integration. What this does is to incorporate technology into teaching and learning. Oftentimes, you get to have their curriculum updated, regular reviews and updates, because you realize that aside the fact that lecturers or teachers are coming to classrooms to teach and give students what they can, you also realize that on the parts of the students themselves are also supposed to assess the performance of their tutors. So teachers have no choice than to be up to their games. Also, another strength of the Western education is learning-centered approach. You have diverse learning abilities and personalized learning methods. Moving forward, one of the things I've realized is that the education system here actually encourages enhanced career opportunities. And because of the broad curriculum, wide range of courses, interdisciplinary learning, you realize that a lot of students, by the time they are done with their education, have a wide range of career opportunities, even beyond what they have learned in school. Because while in school, they are not only being taught about what they need to know about their courses, they are being taught about professional development. Should, in case I get out there and I decide not to do what I've been taught in school, what else can I do in my life? They are being taught all those as part of the learning process. And ultimately, this improves critical thinking and brings about a holistic development. Now, coming to bridging the gap. Basically, we all know these problems. And sometimes we know the solutions to these problems. But I see that the major challenge we have, particularly in Nigeria as a country, is implementing some of these solutions. So what are the strategies we can do as a people? One of them is curriculum reform, updating our curriculum with relevant content, teacher training and professional development, encourage pedagogical skills, where students are exposed to a range of learning abilities, learning platforms, accessible education, technology integration. It's the state at which everything is moving so fast now. We should be encouraging technology education in Nigeria. And some of the importances of trying to bridge the gap of African education to the Western education here is you realize that it gets to you get to have education alignment with the modern workforce. Students are being taught right from school what they need, the abilities they need, the qualifications they need to be able to function once they are out. And not only does this encourage the student, it also empowers both educators and learners. one of the things I've realized or I've found out lately is that, I'm sorry to say this, but I think most of our graduates in Nigeria are unemployable. And this is, I mean, yeah, they're unemployable. And I think this is because once we get out of the university, we don't have the skills to be able to do other things apart from what I did in the university. Again, bridging the gap is also important to be able to encourage conducive learning environments and be able to reduce barriers to access education. So I would just like to give one or two success stories from trying to,
Dr.
integrate.
Moyi, you have three more minutes. Please.
Yes, I'm done. So I'd just like to give some success case studies on the note of trying to bridge the gap between the African education and Western education. We can see an example, a case study from Rwanda, where they won laptop per child program. And what this did was to enhance digital literacy. We also have the case of curriculum reforms in Kenya, which improved learning outcomes and increased enrollment rates. So concluding, I have a difficult time. Anyway, just concluding, we've been able to address the challenges we have in Nigeria. There's definitely a deficiency in the current state of our educational system, and it's important to embrace the changes and advocate for knowledge exchange and partnerships. So I put a summary here for call for action. Everyone should be involved in this change, from our policymakers to our educators to even the students. Our policymakers need to allocate adequate resources and funding to education. And I think that is the first and major thing we need to do. So our educators, we need to embrace innovative teaching methods and move away from the traditional chalk and chalkboard or chalk and blackboard learning. And to our students that are here today, we need to take ownership of our education. You have to actively engage in your learning journey, seek additional resources, online courses, develop yourself beyond your primary or major course of study. And it's also important that we need to promote a culture of learning. So with this, I would just like to challenge every one of us, the lecturers amongst us, the students amongst us, and everyone. It's a holistic approach, and we really need to take action. Once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Moyolua Taiwo, thank you for the wonderful presentation. So all hands have to be on deck in improving the level of education in our country. Yeah, so yeah, before we move on to the next speaker, I would like to recognize Dr. Orimo Bunje, who is joining us today. He's joining us from University of Education, Malaysia. Dr. Orimo Bunje, thank you for joining us. Yeah, so our next speaker today is Dr. Chidozie Okoye. Dr. Chidozie Hind is a DVM from Nigeria, as well as his master's. Yeah, he also had his first PhD in Nigeria, and I guess the second PhD is from Canada. He is currently a postdoctoral associate at the University of Rochester, New York. You are welcome, Dr. Chidozie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the conveners of this meeting and the facilitator. I want to speak because of time constraint. I don't want to waste too much time. Thank you, the anchor person, for the introduction. I'll go straight to present my talk on comparisons and contrast of the Nigerian stroke Western present-day educational challenges. So I am giving a personal perspective. I am not trying to present the national perspective that has already been presented by Dr. Adekunle Alaye, from whom we learned so much. I'm not also presenting a systemic approach that has already been presented by Dr. Taiwo, from whom we also learned so much. So mine is a hands-on, current, perspective from a personal note. Having been in Nigeria, while in Nigeria, I was a lecturer at the University of Nigeria, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Department of Veterinary Obstetrics and Reproductive Diseases. I taught for all, I'm still a staff there though. However, I'm here at the moment. So one thing we have to understand is that education is knowledge and it's power. Education, like Dr. Taiwo rightly pointed out, is a culture and is a personal pursuit. It's not something you're going to delegate to the nation or delegate to the system. It is your culture and it is your personal pursuit. Based on this, we find that what we achieve in life is mostly due to the fact that, the culture we have, whether formal or informal. And if you look at the present state of the US, I'm living in the US, so I use the US as an example. You find Nigerians who excel in every sphere, heads above shoulders, in their places of research endeavor and interest. Then you ask the question, why is it not so back home in Nigeria? I leave that question for you to answer. But this brings up something. It now asks you, I just looked at this fact today, amongst the different racial or groups in the US, on a per capita basis, Nigerians are the first. That is a fact. It's a given. Now the question is, then why do we have the near comatose or moribund educational system back home? This doesn't take away the fact that there are very wonderful universities in Nigeria, but the question is it for everybody? Of course, we know the answer is no. Now, going from there, I will introduce, because I'm making a personal presentation. This morning, I asked my daughter, who is with me in the US, how would you compare your education here to that back home in Nigeria? She said she preferred here. And I asked her, okay, why? Give me a reason. She said straight up, I didn't preempt her, straight up, she just said that here, when she asks questions, she is kindly answered and taught. But back home, when she asks questions, she is yelled at. I am using her words. This presents exactly what Dr. Alaye talked about, and Dr. Taiwo also. Back home, we have a didactic form of education, which is curriculum stroke teacher based. It does not primarily try to answer the interest of the learner, that is the student, because it is imperialistic. It was designed to raise people who can meet and fit into the already existing jobs by the imperial colonial masters. It's not meant to educate you. It is meant to get you to become a utility for the system. And that is not education. And that is what we still have till today. It hasn't changed. America started that same way, but of course the difference is that theirs is dynamic. It adapts to the present day situation. And that brings the next issue I want to address. In 2006, one of my mentors told me, look, the world is now a global village. And we all can attest to that. I'm speaking with the facilitator who is in Kogi. I am here in the US. We can share ideas. What we do here is affected by what we do in Nigeria. Researches you do in Nigeria is read all over the world. So you cannot right now say because you are in Nigeria, that you have an excuse. Nobody asks you that. When you come for an interview, the interviews are world class. They don't look at, I mean, if you write IELTS, if you write any of those language tests, it is not asking you, are you a Nigerian? Are you a Ghanaian? It is global. So the onus lies on you. Don't wait for the system. Make education your culture. Don't wait for Nigeria. If you make education your culture, you'll find that you will keep educating, just like Dr. Michael is doing, coming up with this wonderful forum. Continue from where I started. You find that unlike the Nigerian system, the American system is pedagogical, where it is meant and places the student at the fork. The student is the cynosure. You are the crux of the discussion, of the learning experience. So the experience for learning is student-based. It is also experiential. Once we understand this, it gives us a very nice platform to look at how we can leverage to become global players. So we are in a very narrow village made possible by AI, artificial intelligence, which originally used to be information technology. But you see, it has moved on. It's no more where it used to be. The world is dynamic and you must be dynamic. I must tell you, do not sit where you are. You have to move up. You just have to move up. Now, like I said, education is a personal pursuit. I hope I'm speaking to people who are making it also their own personal pursuits. I have 2 PhDs. I don't know if it is the end. I am being motivated by Michael's father. Michael is the convener of this forum. His father, while I was with him, backed this PhD at the age of 60 plus. So maybe I'm still going to get another PhD. But the question is, what is your learning contributing to your national, personal, as well as societal development? I'm not talking about my publications because this is not about me, but I am trying to bring home to the students what the conundrums, what the situation, what the comparisons are presently. Based on this, you find that education in the US, it will appear that it starts from the very beginning, the very time, the very outset of your educational exposure, the grade schools. You are meant to take up projects. You are exposed to small excursions, small academic trips, and all that, with the idea that they need to expand your horizon, your vista, your education, your experience, your worldview. We are mostly limited by our worldview. By worldview, I mean what you think and what you see and what you should project to be what your own experiences are going to ultimately culminate at. So based on this, one thing you should learn, I am speaking to those who are at the university level. Do not wait for the system to teach you. Pursue education. And I'm using that as the crux of my presentation. I'm almost rounding up. I'm not going to take more than 5 more minutes. Research is going on in the university. You are exposed in the university to research. How many of you key into the research going on, which I am touring? You find that very few. In the US here, you ask, what is the difference? In the US here, people in high school, the equivalent of secondary school, higher classes, are already engaged in research. The young girl who I am mentoring here had already started research when she was still in secondary school. So she has already acquired the skill set. So the first thing you're going to experience is that it starts at a very young age. They don't wait for you until you get to the master's level, like it's the case in Nigeria, before you begin to start your research. Here, it starts way younger when you're still in secondary school. That gives you the exposure you need to the fundamentals and practices of begin to build your skill set. I'm going to put all this together. I'm going to give you a single perspective why all these are important. Beyond just giving you the exposure and the skill set that you're going to acquire as you continue going from one research endeavor at a very young age to the next, is that it exposes you to interact with other scientists. They begin to give you those little best practices, which if you keep inculcating them in your research endeavor, you begin to get better, you're being smoothed out. The next is that you're going to find that you're going to get very little data. You may not publish as a first author, but you're going to be included as the authors. That is very important. I'm going to get to it. This allows you to make presentations also at conferences. Very little presentation. This is critical. When you go for conferences, it also allows you to network with other scientists, other key players, both in the science and in the industry. These all, putting them together, is what gives you your CV. Let me tell you, at the graduate level in the US, you cannot get into a university without somebody recommending you. And it is the strength of the recommendation that is going to get you into a PhD program. It's not based on just your skill set. It is the recommendation first, which is all about who do you know? Who is the person who can write a strong recommendation letter for you? Without that, it is difficult. I'm not saying it is impossible. I said it's difficult. The next thing they're going to look at is your skill set. What can you contribute to the lab? The difference between here and back home is that back home, you are paying for your lab exposure. Here, your PI, that is your principal investigator or the scientist you are in his or her lab, is the one paying. But the person wants to know, what are you bringing to help his or her lab? So the lab here is a workshop. It's just like the shop you know back home in Nigeria. It's a shop. They're here to do business. The business is scientific endeavor and output. So what are you contributing? Is the question. So when you look at coming over here, what skills have you acquired? And from there, I will now segue into what are the areas of prospective research interest that are going to be relevant in years coming. We have seen that IT is no more the norm. It has moved to AI, artificial intelligence. That is the higher level of information technology. If you Google the top 5 CEOs of the world, I have the information right in front of me. The first 3 are all in the AI sector, information technology, stroke artificial intelligence. It is where everything comes back to. The fact that we are having this meeting, looking at each other from the different geopolitical spheres of the world, is because of information technology. It is still going to be relevant. So whatever you do, today we have seen how the COVID pandemic locked down the whole world. But activities were going on because of information technology stroke AI. So if you don't have that, you
recording in progress.
Disadvantaged. I will advise you to improve and to be at the top of your information technology skills. Get it and know how to use it very well. And that does not depend on you coming over to the US. You can get that in Nigeria. Michael will tell you that here and I, we still use people in Nigeria to come up with some of the graphics we use over here. So we are still good at that. So don't give those excuses that we already have, but make education your personal pursuit. Improve yourself. Next, I'm going to go into biotechnology. You find the area of genetics and biochemistry, they will ever remain relevant. Of course, we know of STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths. These are basic. They will forever remain relevant. Rounding up with all this, you find it that Nigeria, like Dr. Alaye talked about, our educational system is moribund. Like Dr. Taiwo talked about, it is still the curriculum of the 1970s. We are used to teach our lecturers. But you have to go out of your way because the information is available. You have information technology, you have all this, social media that you can use to get yourself up to date. You and only you, if we all personalize education, we can make Nigeria great once again. I grew up in a university setting where Nigeria was attracting people from all over the world, Indians, Americans, all over the world. I grew up in the University of Nigeria, inside the staff quarters. So I interacted with all those people growing up. But then what happened? We began to have people that are not educated as our leaders. A blind cannot lead a blind. Until we personalize education and make education a personal project, we cannot live where we are. Presently, rounding up, because my colleagues are lecturers, I was given this information today that the budget for education in Nigeria is 4%. as against the dedicated 25%. You can't do anything with 4%. Education is almost being taken away from the common man in Nigeria. Be that as it may, pursue education, improve yourself, and defeat the paradigm that if you want to hide anything from a Black man, hide it in the pages of a book. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Okoye, for the wonderful presentation. Education has gone global. Do not wait for the system. Test and hunger for self-development. I think that's my take home from your wonderful presentation. So, we will like to invite the fourth speaker for today, in person of Dr. Oritoke Okeowo. She earned BSc, MSc, and PhD from Nigeria, and she's currently undergoing the program in Spain. She's a lecturer at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, Nigeria. Dr. Okeowo, we are glad to have you today.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Oritoke, and I want to start on a very light note to say that I'm the only proper Nigerian among the speakers, because all my degrees are from Nigeria. So every other person has one way or the other been borrowed out. I am the only proper Nigerian, and I am still in Nigeria. So don't. So that's just to be on a lighter note. I can say that we've been too serious all along. So I must appreciate everyone that I spoke with earlier before me, starting with Dr. Michael Issei, who is the convener of this wonderful initiative. This is really exciting and mind-blowing. I must say a very big thank you. This is really very good. So to say again to Dr. Laye, thank you so much for that wonderful background and history to where we're coming from and bringing us along the line to where we are presently. And I must also say that Dr. Tewa has done extremely well to highlight those challenges and strategies to move forward. And Dr. Okoye obviously has also given personal insights, which is really great. And that is very commendable. So I'm not going to take much of our time. I hope so. I'm a teacher, so I get to talk a lot. So I hope I don't. I have tried to streamline most of what I have to say. I've tried to jot them out. And everything that has been said, I must obviously say that they are the truth and nothing but the truth. And they are exactly the conundrum, things that has been on almost everyone who is passionate about Africa, Nigeria, or education. Someone like me, I do call myself a passionate educator, because although I'm a neuroscientist, I'm extremely passionate about education. It is a dream for me that we have it as best as we can. And so even as I have been growing and I am still growing, it's been a big thing on my mind. And I'm so glad that Dr. Michael taught me of honor to bring me, thought me worthy to bring me onto this for this launching. So I would like to say a few things or point out a few things. Like as has been it has been said, I have all my degrees from Nigeria, from my BSc to my master's and as well to my PhD. But I must say that despite that, I have traveled a lot. I'm quite exposed. I've been to several countries, and I've been exposed to different kind of environment and different kind of learnings. And so I must say that I have it both sides, and I understand what it is out there and what it is within Nigeria. I'm presently lecturing in Nigeria at FUTA, and it's also, I know I've seen it, I have it firsthand on both sides. And I must share a personal experience, which was some time ago while I was in the US for a program, and we were in the university setting, And I remember that I was constantly angry. I must use the word angry. And when I was being asked, why are you this angry? I'm like, I'm super angry because what I get to see in this system, from the structure to the arrangements and everything, and I keep asking, why can't we have the same? I love Nigeria. I want Nigeria to be a better place. I want Nigeria to be the envy as it has been in the past. Like Dr. Lai was practically giving this to us, and I was really so interested in the history. But then I'm like, what do we have here? We have it all nice and everything here, but then we don't have it back home. And Dr. Okoye has pointed out that we have it in most universities. Most of the people that are driving these things well are probably from Nigeria, from Africa, Nigeria most especially. I was at Mount Sinai College of Medicine in New York, and on the list of awardees on their board, I at least counted at least 3 Nigerians, and I was blown away. I'm like, these people were here, and what's happening to Nigeria? Nigeria is still in that same space that we all are not happy about. But for me, I strongly feel like, yes, we can have a lot of the complaints and we can point out where things are wrong, but at least also we should begin to do things and intend to continue to do things to drive us or to get us to that point where we really desire to be. So one point on my list is, which I hope that we or policies can actually get there. One thing is giving equal or almost equal value to all disciplines. I want to believe that if a doctor is viewed or is respected as much as a carpenter is respected, our system would be would be better off, even in education. Once again, I will keep, anything I say, I'm going to try to give practical examples to the things that I've experienced. I was in the US and I met a family who are now family friends. And the wife, I must say, she has double degree or double master's degree in aeronautic and aerospace engineering. And the husband just concluded a PhD recently. And their first child was meant to go like finishing college. And they were so excited to know that this child was going to go to a technical school. That's the school for people that are going to learn handwork, that the way we have it in Nigeria, carpentry and the rest of it. And being in Nigeria, I was shocked because back home, if your father and your mother were professors and you say you want to go to technical school, what would be? They'll be like, you have just want to disgrace this whole family. But then this mother and this father were extremely excited. And when I decided to do my in-depth research to find out why, these people are paid so well. Carpenters, you cannot just, your house, your cupboard, your wardrobe cannot spoil, and you just go outside and call 100 naira carpenter. There is a procedure, and they pay them well because they value them. They place them on the same pedestal. Even if you're a doctor, you cannot attend to your patient without a good workbench or a good sitting chair. So carpenters are of extreme value, and they are given the same value, like value instead of being paid, because now most Nigerians are just after money. All of us, most of us, or all of us. If someone is going to go to a carpentry school, a technical school, knowing well at the back of their minds that when they're out of their school, they will not be paid 20 naira per hour, if that's it. I believe that we would have that system or our education in that area, if we develop that way, that we appreciate everyone contributing to the society, then all of us would really want to do the things that we should do. Nowadays, all we find out is that artists are the ones that are being hyped. And that's why any regular child we have that you do not well, they are not conscious about training them. The only thing they want to become is they want to become like probably Wizkid or one person or the other, singing or being an artist. Because even our professors are being paid 300 and something thousand naira per month. How much does that accumulate to in a year? And how much would a professor be able to put together, even when they don't eat out of their salary for 10 years or 20 years? It is an embarrassment. So I feel like the curriculum needs to put the value that is needed to every discipline. like I try to choose that word right, equal or almost equal value. That way, every individual feels valued and every individual would go to the recommended school for whichever discipline that they choose to be without feeling like they would not be up to standard or they would not be well recognized in the society. So I ended up by saying that not everyone has to go to the university. There will be technical schools, there will be polytechnics, who will do their identified responsibilities and they would serve the whole community and the whole society in the way that they should serve. I'm saying I'm a university lecturer. And in the university, what I get to see is you find a lot of students who do not belong. I'm in the medical space. So you get to find a lot of people whose parents have just been told, child just go and be a doctor, child just go and be a this. And they are there, and you would find out that this is not where they want to be. And we begin to do coaching and counseling so that they can graduate. They are wasting their time, they are wasting their lives, and this does not help the society in any way. Yes, Dr. Taiwo has said it. I am, again, also in the university system, and I recognize that most of our teachings are not student-centered. I get to interact with my students in class, and yes, we don't have a university system that evaluates the teachers. Can you still hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that evaluates the teachers, but I try as much as possible to to allow my students evaluate me. Once I teach, at least my first time meeting every class, I try to let them evaluate me. They send an anonymous evaluation report individually, anyone who chooses to, about how they feel about the class, what they think that can be improved, and what they think I am not doing right. At least I try to do that sometimes 2 to 3 times before the semester ends. I know, yes, I'm just trying my best to be a better teacher. And I see that most of my students, they enjoy it. They feel valued when they are asked to, when I ask them to evaluate me. They feel valued. They feel like they are part of the system. It's not me just come and tell them this is it. I also want to know how I can be better with them. And I think I learned that on my journey, moving around, trying to be a better person. Dr. Okoye rightly said, you have to make it personal. And yes, I think trying to make it personal, I learned that along one of my trainings, and I've been trying to incorporate that into what I do from time to time. Also, we keep talking about brain drain and why a lot of people get to move outside the country, move outside the continent. I wouldn't say why not? Because if we look at our system very well, what we'll definitely see is that our system is actually designed for us when we graduate to actually fit into an European or an American system. For example, in the medical space or paramedical spaces, I'm a neuroscientist, so I do basic research. When we do research, what are things that we are researching into? Many of the things are not the things that are of our own specific needs in our environment. What do we need? I think we should really begin to turn things around, and it starts with each and every one of us. If we are doing research, is your research question answering something in America or that benefits American people? Is your research question answering what fits or benefits your local community? If in your community it is malaria that is there, are you answering the research questions looking at what you have in your environment, probably your herbs, how it can help you cure your malaria? Why don't we have a vaccine or something for malaria yet? Because it's not an American thing or it's not an European thing. They don't believe in it that much, so they would never find something for it. And until we begin to understand that this is ours, and we take up our responsibility, draw our curriculums, and draw whatever our questions, our research questions, our curriculum, our strategies to fit our personal needs and then use our children and our youth, let them do their education in that line so that when they are done, they find a space to fit in. No one will tell me that when you got into America or when you got into Europe, you weren't finding it a struggle to really fit in at the beginning. Yes, no matter what, you're training to fit in, but you're not 100% into that space. So you still have to get there and begin to, first of all, struggle and then find your feet. But of course, if we do the things that are fitting into our space, into our own environment, for example, again, I'm going to go in, our buildings, the way the buildings in America and Europe are built, our carpenter cannot easily go and fit in there, or our bricklayers, because their environment is cold. So they are going to build a kind of wall that would insulate, right? So that they can prevent them, help them have some heat. Have a space. There is a space waiting for them to graduate. And that way they can get somewhere to actually practice what they have actually been doing. So in it all, I'm going to end by saying that after looking at all of this, one thing for me that I've always and constantly said is that we should take our own disadvantage. We should rework every of our disadvantage to our advantage. We are in this environment, in Africa, in Nigeria, wherever we are on this continent, in the African continent. What are our disadvantages? Instead of looking at them as disadvantage, can we look at them as advantages and then use them to benefit ourselves? I'm going to also use a personal experience with that. In the research space, I'm rounding up after this. In the biomedical research space, there is always in the European and the American space saying about animal rights, and that you cannot deal with animals, you can't use animals and all of that. But what I have come to say is this: in an African space, in Nigeria, for example, we do not have issues with animal ethics and the rest of it. So now, what do I want to do? I want to talk to people and say, oh, can we collaborate? When you're doing this part of the research, you have lights. Nigerians, we don't really have 100% electricity. You can carry out easily Western blotting, you can carry out genetic studies, you can do all of that. You have antibodies. I do not have access to that. Can I do the behavioral part of the work, send you the brain samples, and you would do the other part of the work? That way, I am making my own disadvantage, which is we not being able to have electricity and the rest of it. But then I have the other part of it, which is I have easy access to animal for research, and I can do that part of the research while we can do the collaboration. In that way, it is a win-win for both of us on both sides. So I want to say, lastly, every one of us, we should, look around us, identify the things and the areas that we can add to this. Instead of just sitting and looking at it as just complaints, we can actually pick up any of these and then try to turn it around and do some of these things. If we're empowered to do policies or to change policies, let's do that. Make changes that would affect or possibly influence our own environment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Oritoke. Thank you for the awesome presentation. She highlighted giving equal value to all disciplines, and that we should tailor our education to our immediate societal needs and also make emphasis on collaboration. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think I would like to invite the last speaker for today, blessing of, I think it's safe to say Dr. Temitope Shobodu. He's a candidate at Massachusetts. He's a PhD candidate at Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Science in the United States here. He earned his BSc and MSc from Nigerian University. Dr. Temitope Shobodu, we are glad to have you today.
All right, guys. Thank you for having me. Just a quick minute. I'm gonna share my presentation. I hope I'm on time. I hope I'm on time and I don't exceed the time because I don't like being okay. Yeah. So just a minute. All right. Okay. So I have some issues to share my presentation. So okay, yeah. So my name is Temitope Shobodu. I'm not a doctor yet. So even if I'm a doctor, I would like to call a doctor anyway. So, but I'm a PhD candidate. I'm at System College of Pharmacy. I'm a fifth year grad student at Medical Pharmacy. I'm a doctoral research fellow at Harvard Medical School, and I basically do drug discovery research in all sides of drug discovery and machine learning. And today I'll be talking about my own anecdotes, my personal experiences about concerning what is obtainable in terms of education in the US compared to being in Nigeria. So I went to one of the best schools in Nigeria, Olabisi University. And I'm not joking. Why I say the best schools? Because those who went to school knows that you learn to be rugged. You learn to define your own future. You learn to define your own path because the system actually offers you almost nothing, next to nothing. So it will be a good upbringing. It will be good facilitation to help you to understand that very early in life that whatever you achieve in your life is based on your own work and less on your environment. So although the environment can actually propel you, should propel you, but in the dysfunctional state that we are as a nation in Nigeria, it is very good to let young people know that nobody's come to save them, and the onus of being successful in whatever career you choose or whatever path you choose, it solely depends on you. Yeah, so I will go straight to the very observed differences I found out in my 5 years of sojourn in the US, in the education system in the US, as a student, as a researcher. I'm also a teacher. I teach chemistry and data science in my grad student program. So the first thing I noticed was when I got to university in the US, my first school was Boston University. So my first class was very, very different. I can remember me walking to the class. First, I was late, but I was scared I was going to be walked out of the class because that's the usual thing in Nigeria. Well, that is good because it actually like makes you timely. But I think there's a little bit of more empathy, more the culture of empathy between the lecturers, the students, and mutual understanding. And I walked up to the lecturer at the end of the class and I was late. I got to the US a day before the class. So and it was snowing everywhere. I've never seen so much snow in my life. So there are in Nigeria, maybe you're in a hall filled with 1,500 students or 2,000 students, you're at the back. And you can't listen to the lecture, you can't hear, because that was my experience in 100 level anyway. You can't really hear what the lecturer is saying. So you can always go back to watch your classes. That helps you like develop an iterative process of learning. So you can go back, what did you understand? Go back, learn again, look at what you've been taught. Two, the learning management system also shows you your grade instantly. So when you write a test, you get to see your grade. So it also helps you to learn to do better in the next to provide feedback, instant feedback, less of, oh, your results will be released 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the semester is over. So that lets you know where you are at the moment. For every test you take, every assignment you do, you get a instant score, instant feedback. So you know how well you're performing. So that also helps in performance. These two things help student performance, help students be on track. And also, the learning management system also have some of your resources, the books, the materials, all the resources the lecturer want to give you for the semester must be there. And if there's none, it's not there, they refer you to the website or to library to go and buy. So unlike Nigeria, where lecturers get by selling handouts, which is none of their fault too, it's because of the way the system is rotten and they are not well compensated or remunerated. There is no grants, there's no funding, external funding from most lecturers or from most academics in Nigeria. So they just have to get by. So so that is the first that was my first observation. So that was for classes. The second observation was for research. You should never go into that. It's a different ball game. It's a different world. Well, I know for graduate research in Nigeria, it's going to be much more funded and much more. They pay more attention to graduate research. Say you do an MSc or PhD levels, but for undergrad levels, the research is next to nothing. I find it disheartening because even at the undergrad level, there should be that is where you structure people's minds to think scientifically. So you start thinking like a scientist, even though you are not one already. So so it won't come down to when you get your MSc, then you have to an uphill to climb, and then you then fall back and can't meet up or can't achieve as much as you would achieve for research. And also for research, the research is funding drive research. Here in the US, NIH funds biomedical research, and the funding runs into billions every year. Yes, we know Nigeria does not have billions of dollars to fund research, but even the little that is being provided is not going to the right places. So there's ingrained corruption, institutionalized corruption on that level. So yeah, the inability to fund research and do proper research is also one of the reasons why we can't meet up, or we can't match, or we can't compete with the rest of the world. And let's be honest here, there's no country in the world that has developed without having a very strong research and development institutions. When I mean institutions, both in universities and also research institutes. China meteorically improved their GDP over 20 years, and they are now almost at par with America. They surpassed the countries like Germany, Japan, who were the second, the third in line to America. So they do massive research. You come to the research studio in the US, you find Chinese everywhere. They are everywhere. People who school in the US or do postdoc in the US can attest to that. Dr. Chijose can attest to that. Michael can attest to that. They are everywhere, and it's not because of nepotism or because it's just because the country helps students learn research. They have publications from early on. They think in a very scientific and doctored way from a very young age in their career, even from secondary school. They start building things, they start trying things out, then they get to university, they're exposed to full-blown research, then they can actually cascade that into PhDs and MScs. So by the time they get their BScs, they already have 2-3 publications. They can compete with anybody in the world. So even It's not like US schools like Chinese, but they can't afford not to have them. They are leading in every form, every way, every they are leading in every works of science and technology. So I think there is no national development strategy that excludes research. Any national development strategy that excludes research is 419. So I will go another problem, another disparity I've seen. My own anecdotes I've seen that different from what we have here. It's kids there are more competent in maths early on, in mathematics early on. And it's not just about being able to read times table, 2 times 1, 2 times 3, 4. It's about being able to expose them to how to navigate questions and solving problems. So problem solving is the major skill here. There's no job application you see. Most job application you see, they will say you must have good problem solving skills. Problem solving skills differs in terms of aptitude. So now let's talk about let's give for instance business the ability to look at data and infer things from the variables. They learn these kind of things early on. It's not just about being able to solve mathematical equations or write mathematical equations, but able to think critically and solve challenges and tailor what you've learned in class to solving challenges, solving real life challenges. In high school here, what they call secondary school in Nigeria, they have projects, and some of their projects are very small projects. They can give them maybe their Ministry of Agriculture or something, their Ministry of or they call them departments, the Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Works and Housing. They have small projects that they would have naturally given to people who work there. But they will just find a very small high school, give it to that high school. The high school will choose some of their best students and they will put them together as a extracurricular activity and they will solve this problem. So those are hands-on learning, teaching kids how to solve problems, real life problems from early on. And they use a lot of quantitative data analysis. They use a lot of maths, a lot of quantitative reasoning, and a lot of algorithmic thinking to actually solve this problem. So these are key things that we don't have, and it's a culture thing. It's a culture thing. We see problems as challenges in Nigeria. Then they see problems as interesting things to work on here. So the white man, there's something called white savior complex, which sounds somewhat denigrating to them, might sound, but to me, it's something that I would love us to imbibe. When you see a problem, you are a savior. You are not at the mercy of the problem. You have that savior complex. I will solve this problem. I will solve this challenge. Whatever I see in front of me is not bigger than me. I will find resources. I'll look for resources and solve it. That's why they've been able to innovate over the years. Able to innovate anybody over the years. So I think we need to start. It also need a cultural orientation. I will see problems. You don't say, it is well, leave it to God. God knows. God will do it. No, they don't wait for God. God has given us science, has given us intelligence, has given us science to be able to surmount our environment, to be able to be God over our environment. So that is why God said we are mini gods. It's because of intelligence we have given us that other species don't have. The rats, the mouse, they don't have the intelligence we have. That is why we are gods. So let's leave that for another topic. I don't want to digress. So now the other point is thesis work. Baba, Mama, our thesis work in Nigeria, where is yours? Is it the library or is it the Agbado stand? So there's no repo. Like our thesis work is in shambles. I'm also I don't know where my thesis work is. I don't know if that's ever been cited or referenced in any publication in Nigeria for any student I've gone to library. I say, this student did this 5 years ago. Let me see what's in this so I can build on that. So yeah, they have a very, very strong rapport of thesis work that they don't lose knowledge. Whatever someone does, they document it and use it for the future. That's how they build on knowledge. That's how they improve on what has already been done. So also classroom engagement. That is teacher to student ratio is terrible. Yeah, we know that. We don't have to say that. Like you go to classes, you see class of 200 students and one lecturer. Yeah, there are things like that. There are very large classes here too, but there's scaling to it. It's very granular in terms of how they lecture, how they teach. Very key components. So they have large classes here too. Some major schools, but at certain levels, at certain courses, it becomes very granular that the teacher to classroom ratio becomes very, very like in the single units, or in maybe slightly in the low double digits, maybe 120 students, one teacher to 30 students. So I think I've mentioned most things, but one thing I also let's mention is critical thinking. So critical thinking, our exams are structured in a way that is la cram or poor. Just cram, you will pass. Yes, fine. Cramming is also a form of intelligence, it's also a form of memory, like able to memorize things, but it doesn't help the student grow over the year. You don't understand the concepts in depthly. Like, you don't get the concepts as granular as possible. You don't find grain, the fine grain of the concepts don't stick. Like, you learn it for a while and you use it, you pass, then you move on. You don't retain that knowledge. So the way we critically ask questions, the way we design our exams is designed for students to just memorize and dump whatever they memorize. So I've talked about the problems of my observations, what I think are the pain points, which every other person has also talked about. But I would also like to move on to some of the reasons why these things are this way. Michael knows me, I'm very political. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone politically here, but I might be a little bit political with my so I'm trying to minimize this. I'm trying to also work with time to make sure that I don't exceed the time frame. So yeah, so I live in Massachusetts. I've lived in Massachusetts for 5 years. I schooled there, so I've used Massachusetts as a reference point, and I'll be comparing Nigeria, even though Massachusetts is the state to the US. I'll be comparing the greatest nation, the biggest ever Black nation. Massachusetts has a population of about 7 million people. Nigeria has about 200 million people, and it's shambles. That I know these are kind of the same. There's less people in Massachusetts, there about 7 million, there's about 200 million. But I will share some figures to see how much a student in Massachusetts is budgeted for. So in the year 2020, the budget for each student in Massachusetts is $15,000. For Nigeria, is $1 or even less. So you can see where the disparity is coming from. So it still comes from the agenda of strategy for education is non-existent. In fact, the strategy for anything is non-existent anyway. So Nigeria is now a kakistocracy. It's more of the people who are the worst of the worst are the people who are ruling us. So we choose the worst of the worst people, or they impose themselves on us, as the last election showed. So we choose the worst of the worst people to rule us, and the results are in the figures. Numbers don't lie. People can do propaganda from today to next tomorrow. Numbers will never lie. So I'll also share this with you. So this is UNESCO publishing a journal article saying Nigeria now has more out-of-school kids in the world than any country. They're asking why. It's the reason not obvious. It's corruption. It's still the money meant to build schools and to fund institutions. So out-of-school kid population in Nigeria in 2020 was 20 million. The education as percentage of the budget was 6.7%. That was in 2020. So now in 2023, we have 26 million out of school kids. So why is the education budget reducing? Is there any common sense? Is there anything that makes sense in Nigeria? Like I see this from this is not even a policy standpoint. This is more of a how am I going to say? It's a sabotage. It's a sabotage on the country. It's like there are a group of people who have been elected to be the best out of us, to lead us to the promised land. And now our ops, they are opposition. They're sabotaging what is our future, what is our commonwealth. So we have more out of school kids in Nigeria, but the education budget has reduced from 2020. So I understand we try to do our own little part to improve the situations of students in Nigeria. But what I would advise to students in Nigeria on a personal level, not on an institutional level, not on I'm not here to sweet talk anybody. I will tell them to japa. I will tell them to leave if they can. If you can't, develop yourself. Your progress, your life, your career don't depend on government, don't depend on institutions you belong to. If you're in school and the curriculum is rubbish, look at what the curriculum for the biggest schools in America or in Europe or in China, what they do. Start building yourself up to that level. If you're in computer science and they don't teach us about coding, about Python, about JavaScript, start learning coding. If you're in economics and they don't talk about anything about data analysis, about econometrics, about things that you need to improve yourself, start looking into that. If you're about medical science and they're not talking about Western blotting, about molecular biology, about molecular dynamics or research or scientific thinking, start looking into this. So that is why we need people like Michael to bring up this kind of platform to help students understand that their lives and their career is dependent on them and not their systems. That's what I would say. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I really appreciate your final notes because I was actually planning to, ask a question, and I think your final note has already done justice to that. Nobody's coming to save you. You design your own future. So, yeah, my question was supposed to be that how do we go about that? But I think you've already done justice to that. So, and I will also encourage participants, especially those that are still in university, to take advantage of the resources available to them. You have YouTube, you have this open Scholar Hub. I believe you can always, develop yourself. You don't have to wait for anybody, any government, because like Temitope rightly said, nobody's coming to save you. So you just have to, like Dr. Oritoke rightly said, Dr. Okoye rightly said, you have to taste and hunger for self-development because education has gone global. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next on our agenda, which is time for question. And I think I have a couple of questions there on the chat. And I believe the first one is for Dr. Adekunle Alaye. Yeah, so this is from Babatunde Kayode. My question is, considering the level of decay in our present education sector in Nigeria, can we premise it on the incursion of the colonial master since there was a system in place that has worked prior to the arrival of the colonial masters? Yeah, Dr. Ala, please kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, just done that now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I believe we can hear you now. Oh, no, you unmute. Yeah, yeah, good.
Okay, yeah, it's quite a very fundamental question, which most times people have always been asking this same question. It has become something very fundamental when you have specific discussions that is drawing comparative assessment between the West and Africa. Yeah, like he said, a system was put in place before the incursion of the whites, and just like Kwame Nkrumah says that my people have been successfully managing their political system before the incursion of the whites. In fact, the presence of the whites brought distortion to the organized African system. Most times, we have this problem of conspiracy theory, conspiratorial practice between African kleptocrats and their Western counterparts could be traced or identified as part of the problems why African educational system is in decay. Because Nigeria would not be the only country that was colonized by the whites. Even the America that we are talking about today was a colony of Britain. Canada was a colony of Britain. Right. Let's even come to the Asian country. We have some countries. Singapore was what? In fact, as of 1960, Singapore has not gotten independence. When Nigeria gained independence in 1960, Singapore gained independence 3 years after Nigeria gained independence. That was 1963. Singapore GDP today doubles or almost at par with some of the Western world. So that tells you that it is conspiratorial. African leaders need to be very altruistic and take the interest of Africa first and consider how their classical nationalists, like I mentioned some of them, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou and all that, they fought to ward off all forms of colonialism in Africa because they believed so much in Africa and they wanted African development. Until the African kleptocrats, the African political class, the African, what we call comprador bourgeoisie, are ready to completely do away with such conspiracy they form with some international organizations, especially when we talk of some of these multinational corporations who come here and they make their money and send the money away through capital flight. What are those things? How many schools? How much of investment are these people making into formal education in Nigeria? Even some of those that are directly making money. You know, I'm talking of the South, where we have a lot of multinational oil companies, where they are directly making their money. What they do afterwards is to send the money back through capital flight to their country. It does make Nigeria a conjunctural environment, a rentier system. So, Mr. Kayode, Nigerian leaders need is just being thrown in shambles. So it is not that we ought not to have developed more than this. It isn't the case that our educational system wouldn't have been better than this. That's why I cited break their relationship with their counterparts of the Western world. We may not be able to solve the African or the conundrum in the African educational system. I don't know if you are fine with if Mr. Kayode is fine with my response or my answer to the question.
Yeah, I believe that has really done justice to his question. However, if he has a follow-up question, yeah, he can drop it on the chat then. Yeah, we'll get back to you. Yeah, I think this okay. This is from Adeni Adesoye. Said part of the challenges we have are people that design the curriculum for different disciplines in Nigeria got there through influence and may not have proper orientation about what's needed. How do we incorporate professionals into policy making, as only few of us have space in bureaucracy, hence they make our curriculum as they deem? I think since Dr. Oritoke emphasized on curriculum, I'll be glad if she can give a response to it.
Okay. Of course, like it's obvious, and I do not think that, yes, most of the people who are into curriculum development are not the professionals most of the time. And also, I also sometimes do not 100% want to agree with that. Yes, some of them are professionals, but what kind of professionals? Because if the new curriculum that Nigeria is using now, which is the BMAS, is it the Systemas or the BMAS, whatever name or title they give to it of recent, they said that they actually brought in the employed professionals list of people from different universities that they would use as consultants for different disciplines. Because I also went for another meeting with which I was invited by the British Council and to talk about this curriculum. And the head of what's it called now, the unit was there, and it was talking about 10 people. One of the people they consulted were at that meeting. But the truth is this, these people, are they really seeing these problems? Or they're just being consultants to just collect the money and go back home? There's a difference between someone who is passionate about two different categories. You can be in educational space. Now that all you need to be a university lecturer is just a PhD degree. And nobody questions your passion for education or your interest in education. So what do we expect? And how do we think that these people, if they are invited as consultants to contribute to curriculum, what do you think they would add to it? Almost nothing. There are meant to be people who are experts in curriculum development. Do we have those kind of people? Do we have people who read education or probably specialize in curriculum development, who would know how to collaborate with people in those disciplines and know the expertise that they have, and they'll be able to put it up as curriculum? So all of these things is really a big one. There is no one way to answer that question. How do we incorporate professionals into policy making, as only few of us have space in bureaucracy, hence they make our curriculum as it fits? Yes, that is it. But I know that during the last one, that way, the adjustment, this last CCMAS, they allowed for about 30% dynamism in each university. And I remember that when my department, we had a departmental meeting, and we were able to, readjust. So we are giving 30% of the 100%, which of course I think is a good starting point. They had a 70% that they wrote, which was untouchable. And I think they said this curriculum should start up by this next session that's about to begin. So the idea is that there's a new curriculum for universities in Nigeria now. There's a 70% that's already I am highlighted as untouchable. They have everything, and they want to make a synergy amongst all Nigerian universities. So what it means is 100 level or a 200 level student in FUTA studying computer science will be doing the same things as 100 or 200 level students in Nsukka also studying computer at the same time. So that's a new curriculum that is about to start up. They will be working on it for a while. So now, out of that 100%, which makes the FUTA computer science especially different